Greetings YouTube and welcome to the Blue Corner and to a Cardfight deck profile for Overdress format, and this one is going to be on Nirvana, the much better Dragon Empire deck and the main character deck of Vanguard Overdress. So that means eventually this is going to get busted because that's just how it is with MC decks. See what happened with Royal Paladin, Gold Paladin, Gear Chronicle, and even Genesis to an extent, as well it wasn't initially. Eventually Astral Deity became a good deck. And they're stupidly good in premium. So, in time, this deck will be really good. And, yeah. What else to say? So, as far as what this deck is about, its featured gimmick is the Overdress mechanic, which is so far exclusive to this deck. Overdressing is basically stacking a unit on top of a unit with the designated name. Like I'll talk about it as we get deeper into the profile. And like it's a 3 attacks deck that sometimes can do an extra one if your opponent lets Valiente hit. They're not going to, obviously, as much as they can, and it hits for a big number. So yeah, it's like Eugene, but with less retire, but more beatdown and more draw power too, thanks to one of the cards in here. And yeah, we'll just get right into it. So for the ride line, starter is the Egg. For the red one, I'm playing the Reno, who, when rode upon by the grade 2, allows you to superior call a Trickstar to your deck. And when this is rode upon by Nirvana, you can Soul Blast one to add Verena from your deck to your hand. Utilizing the many forms of Arena is the Nirvana playstyle, and as we can tell with the next couple sets, there's going to be like a Arena for almost every situation. It feels like you got one that can spot retire, one that provides on hit pressure, one that draws, and then one that deals extra attacks. So yeah, Verena, the card with many forms. So Nirvana here, who has 2 skills. First one is once per turn, you can discard a card from your hand, call a grade 0 card from your drop zone to rearguard circle, and then when it attacks, you can combo one to give it and all of your units with the Overdress ability 10k power until the end of, is it the battle or the turn? Until end of turn. Cool. So that means if you flip the Dragon Empire over trigger on this thing and have the Counter Blast for it, you can potentially buff your front row by 20k, but that's if you have the Counter Blast for it, because spoiler alert, this deck doesn't have counter charge, and yeah, that's kind of a thing that your opponent can exploit. If they damage control you, there's not a whole lot you can do, so you got to be really careful with what you do with your Counter Blasts. Moving on to the rest of the deck, 3 more copies of Nirvana because Persona Riding is really good. Then 4 copies of Arena Valiente, the okay boss monster, with the reveal of what Urgar I should say. This guy's role in the deck is kind of suspect. Like, some people are debating on cutting this thing entirely. I will probably cut out a couple copies of this guy because the double R grade 3 in the new set's kind of okay. But right now, he is a 4 of. So Valiente has the Overdress ability, which allows you to stack it on top of a unit with a designated name. So Trickstar here, you just slap it on and it's like you're riding on top of a rearguard. Neat. And Valiente has 2 effects. The first one is that he gains 5,000 power for every one of his original address during both players' turns. Original address being the units that he is overdressed on top of. Secondly, he can also overdress on top of not only Trickstar, but also any unit that's already in the overdress state, which is what allows him to get big. And finally, when his attack hits, you can Counter Blast 1, discard a card if he's in overdress state in order to stand him back up. And this is a once per turn, and yeah, this is just pressure. If your opponent lets this hit, he restands and attacks again. You can do a couple things with this. So obviously, if you swing at Vanguard, your opponent has to guard it in order to prevent you from restanding. But you could also do rearguard pressure, because he has to just hit anything to get that effect off. So much like Draconic Overlord, you can just swing at a rearguard, hit, discard, restand, swing at Vanguard. And obviously, he's a really good target for the over trigger. But obviously, yeah, the whole issue of your opponent being able to dictate whether or not this guy hits or not is kind of a thing. And it would have been nice if his attack didn't hit like Draconic Descendant, but I guess they felt that would have been too strong for the format. And then finally, yeah, that's it for the grade 3. So moving on to grade 2s, 4 copies of base Verena. So his effect is when he attacks and if he's in overdress state, he gets 10k power. And then also you can Soul Blast 2 to choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So it's good for getting rid of annoying units that could intercept or do other stuff. And this is the only real form of spot removal this deck has. The Soul Blast 2, though, was a hefty cost because you're already Soul Blasting 1 for the Ride Line Grade 2. And when the next set comes out, Urgar also is going to Soul Blast 2. So, like, this guy's role in the deck is going to be significantly reduced when that comes around. I'm obviously, I think, still going to play the 1 copy just because you can search it and the Ride Line's still good. And, yeah, like, he overdresses on top of Trickstar. And so does Verena Arts, who is really good. Like, this is low-key one of the best cards in the deck. So he overdresses on top of Trickstar, and when you place him on overdress state, you can counterblast 1 to draw 2 cards and it gets 5k. It's a pot of greed. Like, there are memes about various Yu-Gi-Oh cards that this deck has. This is a pot of greed. The next set gives you Destiny Draw, as well as... is there a Monster Reborn? I don't think there's a Superior Collie unit from Drop Zone order just yet, but yeah, Arcs is good. Just point of mind, when you have turn 2 Arcs ready to go, call them to the back, otherwise your opponent's just going to swing at it and damage deny you, and you kind of want that counterblast for Nirvana. And then that's it for the grade 2 main deck units. Lastly, I play 3 copies of the 15k order, as defensive options are nice in overdress format. Then for the grade 1s, 4 perfect guards, and 4 of the 10k boosters. This deck doesn't play Tench's Dead because you already are starved for counterblast. You don't want to burn the extra ones on that. And then lastly, 4 copies of Trickstar, your grade 0 that you can search out a deck with the grade 2 ride line, and you can call it back with Nirvana. So Trickstar's effect is it can't be chosen by your opponent's card effects while it's on rearguard circle, which is really good for the prison matchup, as you just call these out as boosters and your opponent can only really just prison your front row, at least until the new stuff comes out. And yeah, you just keep them on board. They can't ever get to 3 cards in prison, which is pretty cool. Then for the triggers, I'm playing the same lineup as Eugene, so 8 crits, 3 draws, 4 heals, and the over trigger because, yep, this deck doesn't need fronts and it needs to draw cards in order to see its pieces, as you need to get to your Trickstars to overdress and you need to get your card units to overdress on top of Trickstar. And that's pretty much all I gotta say. Like, the deck is really straightforward. Manage your counterblasts carefully. You can be aggressive or you can be grindy. It comes down to, I guess, player preference. I'm more of a mid-range player, so this kind of works. And yeah, this deck obviously gets much better when the next set drops, but is it enough to beat Bruce and Bastion? It remains to be seen. Like, Bruce is nuts when the next set drops. Rip boosters in set 2 format. Leonard was a mistake, but Bastion, no. I think this deck comes almost to its power level. I definitely would say that this will be on the same tier level as Magnolia and Orphis when the new set drops. And that's all I gotta say about this. So I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and until next time, this is BlueStar899, jacking out.